Welcome to the Digital Couch, a podcast about the ever changing world of digital. The Digital Couch is brought to you by ValueFirst. The podcast features leading global thinkers and their stories from the world of business, management, and marketing. Now, here's your host, Shoury Gupta.
Hello everyone. Today we have with us Matthijs Keij. Matthijs is CEO of Withlocals. Withlocals connects people and cultures through personalized travel experiences with the locals. Previously, he co-founded FLX1, which is acquired by Teradata, and Fresh Through Digital, which was acquired by GroupM. Matthijs, why don't you say hi to our listeners?
Hi, nice to be here. Thanks for the invite. Let's start with a quick intro from my side. My name is Matthijs. You already did a nice introduction. And I thought maybe it's helpful to explain a little bit about my journey, how I eventually ended with locals. And that journey started roughly 10 years ago when I started my first company that was in the digital marketing space. Very simple model. You have advertisers, usually bigger companies. They want you to spend their marketing budget in a meaningful way. You get a little bit of money for that. And if you do it well, you can build a nice business. But ultimately, it's not really scalable because for every new customer, you also need new people. So around the same time, we also saw an opportunity to do more with technology because the whole marketing world was shifting towards technology.
Right.
So that was the launch of the other company, Flex One. And I think there is a link with travel, but I'll get to that in a second. That company was really a tech company, software as a service, basically still helping customers to spend their marketing budget in a smarter way, but then with the help of technology. I think we built a great product, but we were also a little bit lucky because suddenly the whole world was looking for that kind of technology, including some big companies who also were interested in acquiring our company, which eventually happened. Um, and then as it goes, they usually ask you to stay around for a little bit longer.
Hmm.
But it's an interesting move if you come from a 15 people startup and you go to a 15,000 people corporate company.
Yeah.
So lots of opportunities, definitely lots of learnings.
Yeah.
But then I got the opportunity to join Withlocals. And I know the founders of Withlocals for a very long time. And what really resonated with me was technology is still really important,
Yeah.
but it's also a very different market. Digital marketing versus travel. It's like in marketing, technology was so prevalent. Every company understood the importance of
Right.
technology. And in travel, I remember my first week, a big, really big travel company saying, no, we do not have an API. We just send emails. So that was like a little bit of a culture shock.
Yeah.
Um, but what I really like about with locals is that the work that we are doing, so you already said it, we connect people with cultures, and it really feels like you're adding value. You're bringing something meaningful to the world.
Hmm.
And that's a feeling that I didn't always have in the digital marketing space because I liked the product that we built, but in the end, you're helping big companies to put even more ads online. I guess that's a big difference between what we are doing right now.
Yeah. No, that's very cool. Do you also want to cover about something about with locals? Like what does with locals does? I mean, I spoke about experiences, but if you want to stretch it a bit.
Yeah, sure. What we are doing, we are bringing um, demand and supply together, and we do that in what we call unique and personalized travel experiences, which is a really broad term, but I can give you a very simple example. Let's say you are going to Barcelona on holiday. There is a lot you can do over there. You can Google, you can buy a Lonely Planet book, you can download an app for that. But what is really nice is getting in touch with a local and that local, maybe you share a passion for food, maybe a passion for street art, for history.
Yeah.
That is your choice. So we have a really large selection of local guides available on our website, in our app. So you pick a guide where you feel like, hey, there is a good match with what I would like to do. And then you're going to do an experience, and that can be everything from a tapas tour in Barcelona, where
Right.
you visit a couple of restaurants, but also going to a part of the city where a lot of travelers normally don't go to. So the whole idea is that we give you a different view into a city based on what you like, and also based on how you would like to do it. So if you don't like to get up early in the morning, there's a lot of tours that start at 8 in the morning. If you are not a morning person, you can say, I want to leave at 11. If you are a vegetarian, it's super easy. We say, okay, then we turn the food tour into a vegetarian food tour. So the whole idea is that we bring it in line with what you are looking for.
That's lovely. In fact, thank you for making me miss Barcelona suddenly for no reason. But that's really cool. Also, I want our listeners to know that you should go and visit the mobile website and the app. I mean, it's somewhere I go just to look at amazing design when I'm not traveling. So, just a heads up for others as well. All right, so let's dive into the episode. So, Matthias, I wanted to speak about with what's happening in the outside world these days. We've been surrounded with COVID-19. There's been negativity around. There's been uncertainty, and unfortunately, travel as a sector has been really affected. It's been hit very hard. How have you reacted to this, and how have you been absorbing the past few weeks as an industry or as with locals as well?
Yeah, yeah, good question. And I think um, if you are building a company, there's always ups and downs. But this is really a big one. And I think it's something that you cannot even really plan for. You always try to look at external factors, but this one was so massive. So for us, it started, I think the very first signs were there in December last year, when it started a little bit in Asia. And I remember that we were preparing a board meeting and we said, maybe we have to build a chart where we show the impact of the virus in Asia, but it was like, I don't know, maybe 2%, something like that. And then it was like end of February, and we realized this is going to be really bad news for the whole industry, but also for us. And that was a tough period, also for me, but especially for the team,
Yeah,
because suddenly you are losing a lot of revenue, like over 90%, like almost every company, I guess, in this sector. Um, your costs are still based on a certain amount of revenue. The revenue is not there anymore.
of
So
course.
you have to make a decision. How are you going to bring the costs down?
Yeah.
Which also meant for us that we had to do a reorganization.
Hmm.
And I guess from a rational perspective, you know why you have to do it. But it also means that you have to say goodbye to people who really helped to build the company. So that was really tough for everybody. Um, but then you also come to a point where you have to look forward and think about, well, this virus, we
Yeah.
cannot get it. Yeah, it's not on us to make sure that there is a vaccine, but we can think about alternative solutions on our own side. So we quickly made the switch from offline experiences when you are really going to a city to online experiences. So doing an experience in a video meeting, for instance, we are now building that out to a live streaming platform. So if people go to withlocals.tv, they can see it for themselves. Um, Travel is starting to pick up again, but in a different kind of way. So that's something we're also building. Can we create a portfolio of experiences that are more relevant to local travelers? Because we see, at least in Europe, that a lot of people are still traveling, but they are staying closer to home. They are not doing international flights, for instance. And I think the last point, and that's something, yeah, that's also hard to influence on our side. In the US, it's still, and in some other countries as well, of course, but in the US, it's still a very um, bad situation at the moment. The US is also an important customer segment. Yeah,
Right.
that's a group. I think it will still take a while before we see them back in Europe, given all the travel restrictions.
Nice. So, in fact, you touched upon a very cool point about virtual tourism. Do you want to talk more about it? Because it's something that we're listening a lot about of late. And again, you mentioned about with locals.tv. You guys have been doing some amazing work there. I mean, just a quick one about how does it work if you were to give an example about it.
Yeah, so I think it started with our mission. So we said our mission is connecting people with cultures. Travel is really limited at the moment. Can we find other ways to still take care of that? And then we reach out to our hosts. That's how we call the local guides to see what exactly can they do. And for instance, I think the first one was our host Nico in Rome, who is usually doing a food tour, but he's also a chef and he has like a professional kitchen in his house. So we said, can we do a cooking workshop to make an Italian dish? The
Nice.
people who attend the experience can cook with him or just look if they want to. But then it quickly um, moved into debating workshops. We have Yorgos, a host from Greece, who is doing a dancing experience, which is also really cool.
Wow.
We have another host in Italy who is doing a kind of mini concert with a music quiz. So I guess everything where people feel like, well, how many people love music? A lot, right?
Right.
So just that one experience is already a really good fit with a lot of people. And I think the beauty is you can also go to YouTube and you can find a lot of really impressive concerts. But here, I think it's more about the interaction, the fact that you can also talk to the host and say, what is life like in Italy at the moment? And maybe also share your own personal story. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, that comes back to the mission again. With that online experience, you can really realize that connection. And I think that's what's making it really powerful.
That's quite nice. I mean, so your emotions are still in place when you're traveling, even though you're not there physically, but in a way
Yeah.
you still are. So it's quite beautiful that way, I think. And I think as an industry, it's one of the best ways to do what we can do in these times.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you and the listeners can relate to that.
Mm.
Um, so travel is still impossible for a lot of people, but
Yeah,
people they still want to do something, right? And we all realize a big trip maybe it's not possible,
yeah,
but just the fact that you connect with people in a really different country. I did a workshop with a really lovely couple from Sri Lanka. Well, it's quite far from here. I'm based in the Netherlands. Um, and it's so nice to still connect with other people while you're in the comfort of your own home.
Uh, I'm going to extend this question and ask you something about technology. How artificial intelligence was supposed to also help the travel sector with virtual tourism. AR and VR was supposed to come into the market and apparently change it completely. And from what I see it, it's something that's still very niche, something that's very expensive. But have you seen because of COVID-19 this being speeded up in any way?
Um, Not so much. I think there have been a lot of discussions lately. I know some people who have a pretty strong view on the developments in that area. So where I see it is self-guided tours. Um, they have been around for a long time. So you get an app or maybe really old school, um, a little device like in a museum
Yeah.
where you have a guided tour. And I think there is a lot of potential to use artificial intelligence. Um, but in the end, I think that is not going to replace the human connection. So I think it can be really valuable in terms of being complementary to the experience. But what can AI do for you? I think AI can help you to navigate a city in a smart way to avoid major traffic jams. I think Google is already doing that with Google Maps, for instance.
Right.
It can also help you to come up with relevant suggestions, which is also really valuable. But I think if you compare that to walking around with somebody who has all the local knowledge where you can have like a regular conversation, I'm sure at some point you can also have a really chit-chatty conversation with a chatbot. But I think, first of all, we're not there yet. And more important, I don't think a lot of consumers are actually looking for that. I think the other part of your question, augmented reality. So let's call it a blend between the real world and a kind of layer on top of it with relevant information. I think that could be pretty useful. I remember a regular experience that I did once where the guide was, at least that was my impression,
Mm.
it was like the guide was just reading Wikipedia. And I thought, well, I can also read Wikipedia myself. So if you can get relevant information in a different kind of way, that
Yeah,
would be helpful for me as a person. But I would still like to have that conversation.
of course. So I think that's how you define travel. Also, at the end of the day, I mean, it's also the people around
Absolutely.
you, the conversations you have there. So you already spoke about chatbots also. How I mean, for us, in fact, chatbots a big one. In fact, we look at it as at the fourth industrial revolution of the world. And I have an opinion that something like chatbots and marketing automation can only handhold a consumer, but at the end of the day, the experience still has to be felt, as you were mentioning yourself. So very
Yeah.
interesting. Back in your answer, you also mentioned about how people have not been able to take a lot of international flights off late. And my personal perception or my personal outlook is that domestic travel seems to be the focus for the coming months. Is that something that you're also putting your efforts on as with locals, or you see that happening on an industry level?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are two major trends, I would say. One is that many companies, including with locals, are looking at a proposition that is more geared towards domestic travelers. And in Europe, that could also mean people from Germany coming to the Netherlands, for instance. You can even do that by car. You don't need a flight for that. So that is really relevant. But it also means that you have to think about which experiences are relevant to them. So Amsterdam, for me, it's really close. If
Yeah,
I go to Amsterdam, I've already been on a boat through the canals. I know a lot of the highlights there. So if I look for an experience in Amsterdam, I'm looking for something different. I would like to explore another part of the city. So we have to make sure that we can also offer a different type of experiences. So
Hmm.
that's one. And I think the second thing, and that's really industry wide, is how can you explain to customers, potential customers, that it is safe to do an experience. And of course, you can do all the usual stuff like wearing a mask, having sanitizer with you. But I think there we have a really big advantage with some other companies. We've always been doing private tours, which means it's a small group. It's just you and your friends or you and your family, but it's not you and 50 other strangers in a bus. And I think now, in this time, but maybe also post COVID, I think that will be a really big benefit because I'm sure that people feel a lot more comfortable in a small group with people they know as opposed to being in a very small space with a lot of people they don't know.
yeah.
But that's, yeah, I think a lot of people are thinking about how do we guarantee health and safety with the right precautions, but also in terms of the products that you actually offer.
Interesting. And do you think this is also the way forward for the industry? Because, as we said, the sector has been affected, and even though things seem to be getting better here and there, people are still hesitant. So, for example, personally, I'll be very hesitant to travel for a little while, maybe, because I
Yeah.
have elder people at home, as an example. So, what is the very cliche term, but what is the new normal of the travel industry that way?
Yeah, that it's a great question. And honestly, I don't know because I think I'm on the same side as what you just explained.
Hmm.
I'm also cautious. Um, but then I was in a roundtable and there was somebody who was working in the flight industry. And she mentioned that after 9/11, a lot of people were very pessimistic about the outlook for airlines.
Hmm.
And she said, well, it only took 1 month of slashing all the prices to 30% of the regular price, and all the planes were full again. So I think that's the other way to look at it, right?
Right.
People are creatures of habit. I even see it in the Netherlands. So if you want to go to Turkey for your holiday, there is still like it's kind of a traffic light system, and Turkey is on orange, so it's not entirely safe. But there are so many people who feel like we've been in a lockdown for months.
Yeah.
Now it's really the time to get a break, and we know that it's risky, but let's do it anyway. And I think that's something that you see all across the world. So
Of course.
I don't know. I think a vaccine, that's probably the most important milestone. If
Yeah.
that is there, and the world can take care of distribution in such a way that a lot of people are protected, I think then everything will change again. And I really wonder how quickly people will get back to the old life, I would say.
So I
The
tell
only,
myself the day the vaccine comes out, I'm gonna go get it and take a flight next day. I mean,
yeah,
however it sounds, but that's the plan.
yeah, I guess so. And the only thing I hope is, and maybe that's more from a sustainability perspective, also in work, I think a lot of people have seen that there is a lot that you can actually do when you are working remotely with a team. And
Yeah.
it's definitely not always ideal. But if I look at our own company, it is actually working pretty well. Um, I also did a lot of business trips. So you have to meet an investor in London, and you
Yeah.
go to London for 1 or 2 days. I hope that's a change that is a bit more long term, that we all feel like, hey, maybe there is actually more that we can do remotely. But for leisure, yeah, I think it's also great to explore the world, right? And you can still do that in a sustainable way. But that's also the beauty of traveling, exploring new places, meeting new people. So it's a bit of a two-sided sword.
It is. It is. All right, cool. So I think I'm done with my travel part of the segment.
Yeah,
I've prepared some 4 fast forward questions for you, in which I'll just throw questions at you and you got to quickly
sure.
answer them without
Yeah.
hopefully thinking a lot. All right, so here they go. The number one is, what's your favorite travel destination in the world and why?
So I would say Malaysia. I've been there before. We had to plan to actually go there again this summer, but then doing trekking in the jungle with our kids. What I like is great people, great foods, great nature.
Yeah.
So I would go with Malaysia.
All right, cool. Your favorite with locals experience on the virtual TV right now? I know you'll sound a bit favorite, but if you had to pick one.
Yeah, no, I can pick one straight away. It would be making tiramisu with Laurie and his wife from Venice. Um, and the reason is it's super simple. So maybe I'm not the best chef in the world, but really anybody can make this. Um, the only drawback is you have to put it in the fridge and then wait a night, and it looks like you want to eat it straight away.
Right.
Uh, but that's really great. They know a lot about it. It's a great experience. So yeah, I would definitely pick that one.
All right. 3 reasons why everyone on this planet should travel.
Um, it's so the most important one, in my opinion. It's a great way to broaden your mind. I think meeting new people gives you new perspectives, and in general, I think that's super valuable to meet people who might have different opinions. So that's one. Um, Two is there's just so much to explore in the world, and maybe that's more a personal reason. But I think every place you go to, there's the highlights. But there's also new people you can meet. And now I'm thinking about a good number three. Um, so let me think. I think a lot actually comes back in one and two already. Um, okay, I'll think about number three and I'll get back to you about that one.
All right. And my last question is a tip that you have. So you've been a two-time entrepreneur yourself, and you're also at a leadership position in the travel industry. What would you tell a young entrepreneur who's trying to enter the travel industry during these times? Any tip or a sort of suggestion that you'll have for this person?
Well, if you enter the travel industry right now, my tip would be brave because you need it. Um, and of course, that's a little bit of a joke, but I think there's also some truth in it.
Hmm.
Right now is a difficult situation, but I think there will always be difficult situations. So um, at some point, I hope we look back and we say that was a really difficult period, but we got through it.
Yeah.
But then for sure, there will be another thing. So I think resilience is super important
Hmm.
if you want to make it work. Of course, you need a good idea and a good team and all the stuff you can read online on how to build a company. But in the end, it's you, the founder, the CEO. You have to make sure that you see every obstacle as an opportunity to get out stronger. It
Yeah.
sounds easier than it is sometimes, but I think that would be my best advice.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Matthias. I think
Thank you.
I've had a great conversation learning more about the industry, about with locals. Thank you for making me miss Barcelona and Tiramisu. I'm going to look at those experiences hopefully soon. Been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining us this time on The Digital Couch. Make sure to visit our website, vfirst.com, where you can subscribe to the show on the platform of your choice. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, do write to us at thedigitalcouch@vfirst.com. Be sure to tune in to our next episode. See you.